My name is Rachel Morgan, and I'm 38 years old. On paper, my life looks like the kind of neat little profile that makes loan officers relax and relatives at Thanksgiving murmur, she's doing well for herself. Steady career in logistics management. Clean credit. A comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood where kids ride bikes until the streetlights blink on. 2 cars in the driveway. A modest retirement account. A husband who, to the outside world, looks like a catch. His name is Matthew Morgan. He's 36, a dental hygienist with a bright smile and an easy laugh. People describe him as a people person in the adoring way they reserve for men who remember birthdays and charm waiters into free dessert. If you looked at us from the outside, you'd see modern marriage, dual incomes, shared life, shared dreams. You wouldn't see the spreadsheet open in my mind every time I swipe my card at the grocery store. You wouldn't see the joint account that's supposed to be ours, and the personal one that's only his. We got married 8 years ago. I remember the exact conversation that decided our finances, even though at the time, I didn't realize it was a trap disguised as empowerment. We were sitting at our tiny first apartment kitchen table, mugs of coffee between us, talking about how to do money the right way. Matthew leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head. "Look," he said, "you know I'm all about equality, but it's different for men." I frowned. "Different how?" "Women need financial independence more," he said. "You know that. Wage gaps, career breaks for kids, all that. So we should structure things in a way that protects both of us." It sounded reasonable. I watched him when he talked, how confident he was, how certain. "What are you suggesting?" I asked. He smiled, that slow, charming smile that disarms dentists and in-laws alike. "Your salary goes into our joint account," he said. "For the house, the bills, our future. My salary goes into my personal account. As backup. In case anything happens. We're a team. Your money is our money. My money is our safety net." I remember the tiny knot in my stomach, the one I smoothed over with logic. "Shouldn't we both have personal money?" I asked quietly. He tilted his head. "Don't you trust me?" There it was, the guilt card. "This is how modern marriages work, Rach," he continued. "You'll never have to worry about bills alone. I'll always be here. And if something happens, I've got our backup. Isn't that what a good husband does?" Young, in love, eager not to be the controlling wife, I agreed. For 8 years, every penny of my paycheck went into the joint account. For 8 years, every bill that kept us alive and housed, mortgage, electricity, water, internet, car payments, insurance, groceries, vacations, birthday parties, came out of that joint account. Meanwhile, Matthew's $65K a year flowed quietly into his personal account. When he came home with designer sneakers or a limited edition watch, he'd grin and say, "Don't worry, I used my own money." When he booked boys' trips to wine country and group spa days for self-care, he'd say, "It doesn't touch our bills. This is why we set things up this way." When I asked, gently, if he could help with a big bill, he'd sigh and say, "I shouldn't have to pay for basic living expenses. That's what husbands do. My money is for extras." I told myself it was temporary, that once we had kids, if we had kids, maybe I'd take a career break and then his savings would protect us. That's what I repeated to myself any time the knot in my stomach tugged. We never had kids. We did, however, have a water heater. 3 months ago it died. I found out the way everyone does. In the shower, when the water suddenly turned from warm to glass-cold needles. That evening, I stood at the kitchen counter with the plumber's estimate in my hand, still damp from my fingers. $3,500, I said. "We have to replace it. The joint account's a little tight this month, so maybe you could help cover part of it from your savings?" Matthew didn't even look up from his phone. "That's a house expense," he said. "Use the joint account." "There's only about $2,000 left after the bills clear," I said. I'd already done the mental math twice, then triple-checked the banking app. "If we pay this, the account will be almost empty." He shrugged. "Then figure it out. Take extra shifts or something. Your salary goes into our account. My salary is my business." My business. I'd heard that phrase before, on his lips, said with the same airy dismissal. But this time, something in me went very, very still. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the man wearing a watch that cost more than our first car, scrolling casually through vacation photos on his phone, telling me to figure it out after I had paid every bill, every month, for 8 years. "Matthew," I said slowly, "do you hear yourself?" He finally glanced up, irritation flashing in his eyes. "You're overreacting. This is the system we agreed on." Don't start changing the rules because the water heater picked a bad month to die. He went back to his phone. That night, after he fell asleep on the couch with some streamer show playing in the background, I opened my laptop. I pulled 8 years of bank statements from our joint account. Line by line, month by month, I watched my salary march into that account and march back out again in the form of bills, repairs, groceries, mortgage payments. I added it up. Roughly $680,000. My money, our bills. I compared that to the absence of his deposits. I thought about his designer habits, the trips, the casual mentions of some investments he'd made. I estimated, conservatively, that he had at least $400,000 stashed away between savings and investments. $400,000. I sat there in the blue glow of the screen, my heart pounding as a single bitter thought settled in. He doesn't have a backup for us. He has a backup from me. So I started researching. Economic abuse, financial manipulation in marriage, joint accounts, and what you can do if your name is on them. State laws about premarital assets and community property. I learned 3 very important things. 1. What he'd been doing for 8 years fit the definition of economic abuse more closely than I wanted to admit. 2. Either party can modify or drain a joint account, as long as their name is on it. 3. My company allows direct deposit changes to take effect immediately if submitted by Tuesday for Friday's paycheck. It was Monday night. By Tuesday morning, I had an appointment at the bank. I walked in with a folder of documents and walked out with something I hadn't had in 8 years, my own checking account. Then I went to HR and submitted a direct deposit change. My next paycheck would be going somewhere new. I didn't touch the joint account. Not really. I left exactly $2 in it, just enough to keep it technically open, just enough to let the system run its little automated scripts. Friday was payday. Thursday night, Matthew was sitting at the dining table, browsing for shoes. "Your check hits tomorrow, right?" he called out. "I'm buying those Louboutins I showed you, only $1,200 on sale." "My check hits tomorrow," I said, stirring pasta on the stove. "Perfect." "And don't start complaining about shoes," he added with a laugh. "You spend money on your stupid tools." My stupid tools are the reason our house doesn't fall apart, but I didn't bother saying it. At 12:01 a.m., his phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it started ringing. "Rachel!" he shouted from the bedroom. "Babe, something's wrong with the bank app." I walked in, feigning sleepiness. "What's wrong?" "Your deposit didn't come through," he said, voice high and sharp. "It's showing the joint balance is $2. What did you do?" "That's weird," I said. "Maybe it's a bank delay." He jabbed at his phone. "Call your payroll. This is unacceptable. We have bills on auto pay." "I'll check in the morning," I said. "Payroll's closed." "No!" He was almost shouting now. "Call someone. You can't just—" "There's nothing I can do tonight, Matthew," I said, letting my voice go flat. "Go to sleep." He didn't. He stayed up for an hour, refreshing the app, calling the automated line, pacing. His automatic transfer to his so-called emergency fund failed. His shoe order was declined. By morning, his panic had settled into raw anger. He was already on the laptop when I came into the kitchen, banking site open, eyes wild. "What did you do?" he demanded. I poured myself coffee. My hands were surprisingly steady. "I took your advice," I said. He blinked. "What advice?" "You said your salary is your business," I replied. "So I decided my salary is my business too." The color drained from his face. "You what?" he whispered. "I opened my own account," I said. "My direct deposit goes there now. The joint account still exists. It has $2 in it. If you'd like to contribute your half of the bills, they come to about $5,500 a month. Your half is $2,750. For a moment, his mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish dragged out of water. "You can't do that," he finally sputtered. "That's not how it works." I looked at him, and for the first time in 8 years, I didn't look away. "How does it work, then?" I asked softly. "Your money is yours. My money is ours?" He didn't answer. That's when the tears started. Then the shouting, then the phone call to his mother. And that's when I realized the water heater wasn't the thing that broke. I was. The next few days were like watching someone flip through a deck of manipulation techniques, one card at a time. The morning after the joint account apocalypse, Matthew tried the soft card first. He cooked breakfast. To understand how strange that was, you'd have to know that this man once claimed scrambling eggs was too much effort before coffee. But that morning, I walked into the kitchen to the smell of bacon and pancakes. He'd even made my coffee the way I like it. Strong, a little cream, no sugar. He was in an apron I didn't know we owned. "Hey, babe," he said, smiling too wide. "I thought we could, reset." talk. Have a nice morning. The table was set. There was a little vase of flowers he must have grabbed from the corner store. It looked like a stock photo of husband making an effort. I sat down slowly. Okay, I said, talk. He slid into the chair across from me, reaching for my hand. I get that you're upset, he started, squeezing gently. I do. I know you feel unappreciated. Maybe I haven't been vocal enough about how much I value you. I watched him, the way he framed it, how I felt unappreciated, how it was a communication issue, not a structural one. This isn't about feeling, I said. It's about math. He let out a little laugh, strained but charming. Everything's numbers with you, logistics queen. I pay every bill, I said quietly. Every single one for 8 years. You've paid for shoes and wine country. That's not a feeling. That's a ledger. His smile faltered for a second, then snapped back. I contribute, he protested. I cook, I clean, I manage the house when you're at work. I also cook and clean, I said, and I pay 100% of our living expenses. If you want, I can print the spreadsheets. His jaw tensed. We're partners, Rachel, he said. Partners don't nickel and dime each other. Partners trust each other. No, I said. Partners don't drain one person dry while hoarding a backup for themselves. His eyes flashed. I watched the mask slip for just a moment before he forced it back on. The soft card didn't work. By Sunday, he'd moved on to anger. Cabinet doors slammed, drawers yanked. He stomped around the house like a storm in human form, muttering loud enough for me to hear. Financial abuse, he hissed at his phone one afternoon, pacing the hallway. People are going to be on my side when they hear what you're doing. That evening, my mother sent me a screenshot. Matthew's Facebook post, public. If your partner suddenly cuts you off from joint funds and locks you out financially, that's abuse. Men can be victims too. The comments were a parade of his friends and extended family calling me controlling, a gold digger, a toxic wife. They knew nothing about the bills, the 8 years, the numbers. My hands shook as I read it, not from hurt, from a kind of cold, clean fury. I opened Facebook, found the post, and typed one comment. Interesting perspective coming from someone with $400K in personal savings, while their spouse has paid 100% of the bills for 8 years. I have the statements if anyone's curious. I hit post and closed the app. The silence was brief. Then the post disappeared entirely. He wasn't stupid, just entitled. Monday, he went nuclear. I knew something was wrong when my boss, James, called me into his office right before lunch. He shut the door gently, sat down across from me, and folded his hands. Rachel, he said, is everything okay at home? My stomach dropped. Why? Your husband called me, he said. He told me you're having a mental health crisis and making irrational financial decisions and that he's concerned. There was a long, suspended moment where all I could do was stare at him. Then a laugh escaped me, sharp, humorless. Of course he did. James lifted an eyebrow. So I'm guessing this is not about you gambling away your paycheck on crypto. No, I said. It's about me stopping my paycheck from going into his shopping fund. Ah, he leaned back. One of those situations. He told me HR had already confirmed my direct deposit change was legitimate and documented his call as potential harassment. I watched the concern on his face soften into something more like weary understanding. Look, he said, whatever's going on, HR's on your side here. If he calls again, we'll handle it. But maybe talk to a lawyer, just in case. The word lawyer lodged itself in the back of my mind like a seed. When I left work that evening, my phone buzzed with a call from the bank. Mrs. Morgan, the teller asked. This is First Street Bank. Your husband is here trying to add himself to your personal account using your marriage certificate. We wanted to verify. I closed my eyes for a moment. Of course. That account is mine alone, I said. He does not have my permission to be added. Please note that on the account. Yes, ma'am, she said. We'll handle it. In the faint background, I could hear his voice rise, sharp and indignant. By Tuesday, I had a consultation scheduled with an attorney. By Thursday, Matthew found a new line to cross. I came home from work and immediately knew something was off. The key wouldn't turn. At first, I thought I'd grabbed the wrong key from my ring. Then I noticed the lock itself was different. New, shining metal where there should have been the scratched, familiar old one. A chill went down my spine. There was a note taped to the door. Since you want everything separate, I'm separating you from the house. M. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I did something that surprised even me. I laughed. It came out a little wild at the edges, but it was laughter all the same. A kind of hysterical, disbelieving amusement that this man truly thought changing my locks could make me homeless. I called a locksmith from the porch. Legally speaking, I asked the woman who answered, if my name is the only one on the deed to the house and my spouse changed the locks, can you still let me in? If you're on the deed, it's your property, she said. We can ask to see documentation, but yes, we can get you in. Great, I said. I also need a police presence for a civil standby. I hung up and dialed the non-emergency line. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. Out stepped Officer Martinez, looking exactly like a man who'd seen every kind of domestic drama. He listened as I explained, nodding occasionally. So, he summarized, your husband changed the locks on a house that's deeded solely to you. Correct, I said, holding out the folder with a copy of the deed. His name wasn't anywhere on it. Martinez glanced over it, then handed it back. Sounds like you need a lawyer, he said. But in the meantime, you're allowed into your own property. We'll be here while the locksmith does her thing. The locksmith arrived, worked the new lock with efficient movements, and within minutes, I was standing in my own foyer again. I'd barely stepped inside when I heard the front door fling open behind me. Matthew stood there, eyes wide, face flushed. What are you doing in here? He demanded. I changed those locks. Officer Martinez turned slowly toward him. Ma'am, he said to me, this your husband? Yes, I said. The officer shifted his gaze back to Matthew. Sir, you can't lock someone out of their own property. It's our property, Matthew snapped. We're married. That makes it communal. Is your name on the deed? Martinez asked calmly. Matthew hesitated. No, but... Then you change the locks on property you don't own, Martinez said. That's not how this works. The silence that followed was thick and hot. For once, Matthew had no quick answer. I reached into my bag and pulled out a stapled set of papers, neatly prepared the night before. Here, I said, holding them out to him. Since we're clarifying things, let's make it simple. He didn't take them. I placed them on the console table by the door. What is that? He asked suspiciously. A rental agreement, I said. If you want to keep living here, you can. Rent is $2,750 a month, half the mortgage and expenses, first month due immediately. His mouth fell open. You can't charge me rent. I'm your husband. You're right, I said evenly. Partners split things evenly. By that math, you actually owe me about $264,000 for 8 years of back expenses. The rent option is me being generous. He went pale. I don't have that kind of liquid cash, he said, voice cracking. Most of it is invested. It's tied up. So untie it, I said, or sign the rental agreement, or move out. Those are your options. Officer Martinez watched the exchange with professional neutrality, but I caught the tiniest flicker of something like respect in his eyes. Matthew stared at the papers, breathing hard. For the first time since we'd married, I saw it hit him. He wasn't the one holding all the cards anymore. He didn't sign the rental agreement that night. He didn't move out either. He just stood there in the hallway, staring at the papers as if they were written in another language, one where consequences was a word he'd never had to learn. That was the night the quiet war began. The first battle came disguised as an apology. 2 days later, Matthew came home early from work with takeout from my favorite Thai place. He set it on the counter like a peace offering, smiling that familiar, easy smile that once could have softened me. Truce, he said gently. I miss us, Rach. I looked at the stack of takeout boxes. You miss free rent, I said. His expression didn't even crack. You've turned into someone else lately. Cold. Punitive. You used to be warm. I used to be naive, I said. You mistook that for warmth. He sighed, setting down the chopsticks. You're being dramatic. This isn't abuse. It's a misunderstanding. Funny, I said. You were the one calling HR last week, telling them I was irrational. That didn't sound like misunderstanding. The silence that followed was thick. His eyes flicked down, away from mine. The peace offering ended right there. By Saturday, he tried again. Different tactic this time. He posted a carefully curated Facebook update. When love turns into control, what do? Asking for a friend. I didn't reply. But the next day, his sister Ashley texted me. What's going on? Mom said you're financially abusing Matt? I stared at the message for a long minute before replying. Ask him to show you his bank balance. No answer after that. Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found Dorothy, his mother, standing there, lips tight, arms crossed, a handbag clutched like a shield. Behind her was Ashley, red-faced and jittery. Rachel, Dorothy said in a tone that made my full name sound like a crime. We need to talk. Of course we did. They marched right in as if invited, Dorothy looking around the house like an inspector. You've gone too far, she declared. Financially abusing my son, withholding money from him, changing your paycheck? What kind of wife does that? I leaned against the doorframe, folding my arms. The kind whose husband kept every cent of his income while she paid for 8 years of living expenses, I said calmly. You raised him to believe that's normal, so I guess this is your curriculum. Dorothy's eyes flared. Men are supposed to provide. That's their role. Then you'll be thrilled to know I've been doing exactly that, I said. For both of us. Ashley's eyes darted between us, uncertain. Wait, Mom, didn't Matt say he was paying the mortgage? I pulled a folder from the counter and handed her a copy of the deed and the payment record. My house, I said. Bought before we married. Never added his name, just like he never added mine to his savings. Dorothy's mouth opened, closed, opened again. The color drained from her face. This is outrageous, she hissed. You're going to leave my son homeless? He has $400,000, I said flatly. He can buy his own home. Ashley's jaw actually dropped. Dorothy turned on her. Don't take her side. Ashley's voice was small but clear. You told me Matt was struggling. He is, Dorothy snapped. With what? I asked. Account logins? That ended the visit. They left in a fury, Dorothy muttering about ungrateful modern women. The door closed behind them, and for the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. But Matthew wasn't done. That evening, I heard him in the living room on the phone. His tone was low, urgent, and smug. Hi, Roger, he said. It's Matthew Morgan. I need to make a large withdrawal from my personal account. A pause. Then, what do you mean flagged? Suspicious activity? But it's my money. I leaned against the doorway, watching as his confidence cracked. Apparently, trying to suddenly pull $50,000 out of an account to teach your wife a lesson triggers fraud protection. He hung up, furious, and slammed his phone on the table. I didn't say a word, just raised an eyebrow and walked away. 3 days later came the next escalation. I came home from work, set down my keys, and immediately felt it. The tension, heavy in the air. Matthew was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, a smug half-smile on his face. So, he said casually, funny story, I had a chat with your boss. My stomach tightened. You already tried that. Oh no, he said, voice syrup sweet. This time, I told him you've been transferring money behind my back, creating instability in our finances. He seemed very concerned. Did he also seem concerned when HR flagged your last call as harassment? I asked. The smile faltered. This isn't funny, Rachel, he snapped. You're destroying our marriage. I think I'm just removing your access to the bank account you married for, I said. He stood abruptly, hands slamming the table. You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. I met his eyes, calm. Maybe, but at least it'll be mine to regret. The next day, I got another call from the bank. Mrs. Morgan, your husband came in again, the teller said, weary. He brought your marriage certificate and demanded access to your account. We declined. I could hear him shouting in the background, angry, humiliated. I thanked the teller, hung up, sat there for a moment in my car, letting the absurdity sink in. Then I smiled, because I knew what was coming next. Friday night, 7:30 p.m. I pulled into the driveway. The lights inside were on. When I reached the door, my key stuck again. No, not again. I knocked. He opened the door just enough to smirk at me through the crack. Since you want everything separate, he said, voice dripping with triumph, I'm separating you from the house. I stared at him, the absurdity of it almost funny. Then I said evenly, Matthew, step aside. He raised his eyebrows. Or what? Or you'll watch me make this your worst mistake yet. He laughed and slammed the door. So I sat on the porch steps, pulled out my phone, and dialed 2 numbers, a locksmith and the non-emergency police line. By the time Officer Martinez arrived, I'd already pulled up the deed and printed proof of ownership from my email. The officer listened to the summary, then asked for my ID and documents. He looked at the paper, nodded once, and radioed for the locksmith. 10 minutes later, the lock was open. I stepped inside just as Matthew stormed out of the kitchen, furious. What the hell do you think you're doing? Officer Martinez held up a hand. Sir, calm down. She doesn't live here anymore, Matthew barked. I changed the locks. Martinez looked at him like a man trying to reason with a toddler. Sir, your name isn't on the deed. You can't lock someone out of property they own. She's my wife, he protested. That makes it communal property. The officer tilted his head. If her name isn't on your savings account, is that communal too? Matthew froze. The silence was exquisite. Didn't think so, Martinez said, jotting something down in his notebook. I turned to Matthew, holding out a neatly stapled packet of papers. Here, I said. You can stay if you pay rent. He blinked. What? Rent, I repeated. $2,750 per month. Half the mortgage, half the bills. Due now or move out. His face went from red to pale in under a minute. You can't charge me rent, Rachel. We're married." "You're right," I said evenly. "So technically, you owe me back pay, about $264,000, for 8 years of expenses I covered alone. The rent is me being generous." His voice cracked. "I don't have that kind of cash. It's all tied up." "So untie it," I said, "or start packing." Officer Martinez cleared his throat. "Sounds fair to me," he muttered under his breath. Matthew stood frozen, looking between me and the officer like he couldn't believe the world had stopped bending in his direction. And that's when I realized something. For years, he'd used charm as currency. But charm only works when people still believe you. He wasn't the one holding power anymore. He was just the one holding overdue rent. The following weekend, my phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Family dinner at my parents' house tomorrow, 6 p.m. It's important." It was from Ashley, his sister. I didn't need a crystal ball to guess what important meant. An ambush. Still, I went, partly because I wanted them to see the truth, and partly because some small, wounded part of me wanted witnesses. People needed to hear what Matthew had turned our marriage into. When I pulled up to Dorothy and Robert's house, the driveway was packed. Both families were there. My mother, my sister, his parents, his sister, even his aunt. Matthew stood in the middle of the living room like a tragic actor waiting for applause. He looked thinner, unshaven, and far too proud of what was about to happen. "Rachel," he said, voice heavy with false relief. "You came. I'm glad. We need to clear the air." He gestured for me to sit. Everyone else was already arranged like a tribunal. Dorothy was crying quietly. Robert's face was all stern disappointment. Ashley looked nervous. My mother looked like she'd seen the show before. Matthew began softly. "She's not the person I married," he said. "Ever since she changed her paycheck, she's been cruel, controlling, threatening to make me homeless." He wiped at a tear that didn't quite exist. "I've given everything I could, but she turned on me." Robert frowned deeply, turning to me. "Rachel, this has gone far enough. A man provides. That's how it's always been. But humiliating your husband publicly? That's not right." I smiled faintly. He thought I came unprepared. "I agree," I said, reaching into my bag. "Humiliation isn't right. Facts, however, are." I opened the folder and began laying papers on the coffee table one by one. 8 years of bank statements, I said. Every one of my paychecks, $85,000 a year, went into our joint account. Every bill, every mortgage payment, every insurance renewal, every grocery trip came out of that account. I flipped the page. Matthew's contribution, 0. A few murmurs rippled through the room. Dorothy's crying faltered. Robert's frown deepened. Matthew's jaw clenched. "Money isn't everything," he snapped. "You're right," I said. "Let's talk about labor." I pulled out a laminated chore chart. His from year 3 of our marriage. All chores marked as shared eventually became Rachel. When he refused, I hired cleaning services. Receipts here. I set them down, neat and surgical. Meal prep? Delivery service? Paid by me, because Matthew doesn't like to cook anymore. Ashley blinked, clearly stunned. Matthew sputtered. "This is out of context. I contribute emotionally." My sister, who had been quiet until that point, actually laughed. Out loud. "Emotionally?" she said. "You changed her locks and called her job. That's not emotional support. That's emotional terrorism." A few people gasped. Robert looked sharply at her, but my sister just crossed her arms. I went on. "Here's the police report from when he locked me out of my own house. Here's the HR complaint from when he called my boss pretending I was unstable. Here's the fraud alert from the bank when he tried to access my personal account." I spread them like cards in a losing hand, because they were his. He turned red, then pale. "Those were misunderstandings." "And this?" I said, turning my phone around to show his Instagram post. A brand new $3,000 handbag with the caption, "Retail therapy because my wife is being mean," Dorothy whispered. "Matthew." He looked like he wanted to disappear. "That's my money," he said finally, desperate. "I saved it. You can't do this." "So your money is yours," I said softly. "But my money is ours?" "Yes," he snapped. "That's how marriage works." The room went utterly silent. You could have heard the air conditioning click. Even Dorothy's eyes widened. Ashley's hand went to her mouth. Robert exhaled slowly, the sound long and tired. "Son," he said, voice low, "that's not a marriage. That's theft." Matthew looked at him, startled. "Dad." Robert raised a hand. "Don't. She paid for your life while you saved every penny. You locked her out of her home, and you called her boss. That's not how I raised you." Dorothy looked stricken. "We failed him," she murmured. I gathered the papers back into my folder, precise and calm. I'm not here for apologies, I said. Just clarity. My mother stood. You've got all the clarity you need, sweetheart, she said. Let's go. As I walked out, I glanced back once. Matthew stood in the center of his family's living room, the weight of 8 years finally crashing down on him. For once, there was no defense left to give. The next week, he still didn't sign the rental agreement, but he also didn't speak to me. We lived in silence, like strangers on opposite sides of a war zone. Then one Thursday, I came home from work, opened the front door, and froze. The living room was half empty, the sofa gone, the dining table gone, the bedroom set gone. Matthew sat cross-legged on the bare floor, scrolling through his phone. What did you do? I asked. He didn't even look up. Sold them, he said casually. They were communal property. My half, my money. Don't worry, I got a good price. Define good, I said slowly. $3,000, he said, proud of himself, for all of it, cash. I took a deep breath, then said, Show me the receipts. He smirked. Why? Scared I got more than you thought? Show me, I repeated. He handed over the papers, smug. I scanned them once, then looked up. You know, theft over $5,000 is a felony in this state, right? He laughed until he saw my expression. What are you talking about? I walked to my desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out my own receipts, the ones from when I'd bought every piece of that furniture years before we married. In my name, I said, premarital assets, legally mine. His smirk vanished. You just confessed to selling property that wasn't yours. You even kept the receipts. Congratulations. You wouldn't dare call the cops, he said. It's our house. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, it's my house, and you just committed a felony in it. I hit dial. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They reviewed everything. His sale receipts, my purchase receipts, the photos of the furniture in our home. It took about 10 minutes for the officer to close his notebook and look at Matthew. Mr. Morgan, he said, you're under arrest for felony theft. The color drained from Matthew's face. You can't be serious. I'm afraid we are, the officer said. Over $5,000 in stolen property meets the threshold. When they handcuffed him, he started shouting, half excuses, half disbelief. Dorothy arrived just in time to see him led out to the patrol car. Her face went pale. Rachel, she whispered, please, this will ruin him. I met her eyes. He ruined himself. He spent the night in jail. Robert bailed him out the next morning and hired a lawyer who called me before noon. Mrs. Morgan, the man said politely, my client is willing to make restitution to avoid charges. Full replacement value, I said. $8,000. Plus he moves out immediately. That seems steep, he said carefully. Felony conviction seems steeper, I replied. There was a pause. Then, he'll pay. By that evening, Matthew had liquidated part of his tied-up investments and handed over the money. He moved back in with his parents the next day. 2 weeks later, divorce papers arrived. His lawyer's proposal was laughable. Half the house value, half my 401k, spousal support. My lawyer, Kim, a sharp, dry woman with an MBA's soul, actually laughed out loud when she read it. He's the one with $400K in savings, she said, and we have documented financial abuse and a police record. He'll be lucky to leave without paying you alimony. I signed the papers without hesitation. It's been a month now. The house is quieter, cleaner, lighter. I replaced the furniture he sold, with better pieces this time. Ones I chose not out of obligation, but joy. My paychecks hit my account, and every penny feels like oxygen. Sometimes I catch myself smiling at the little things. A full fridge paid for with my own card. A weekend with no arguments. A home where every light switch feels like mine again. Matthew's Instagram has transformed into a string of vague motivational quotes. Starting over is hard, but worth it. Financial abuse survivors deserve love too. Someone eventually found a link to the Reddit post about our story and flooded his comments with the receipts, literal and metaphorical. His friends, the ones who called me controlling, have gone very quiet. Dorothy called last week crying. You've destroyed my son's life, she said. No, I told her. I just stopped funding it. Robert texted 2 days later. I'm sorry, we failed him. Good luck, Rachel. Ashley DM'd me asking if the story was true. I sent her the spreadsheets. Her reply, holy shit, no wonder my boyfriend won't propose. Next month, I'm selling the house and buying something smaller, closer to work, a clean start. I'm taking myself on vacation. The first one in 8 years, I won't have to budget around someone else's shopping addiction. I used to think partnership meant sharing everything. Now I know it means respecting everything, especially yourself. And if anyone ever tells you, your money is our money and my money is mine, believe them, then run.